Hello and welcome to the M.B.Om podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. M.B.Om is a proud part of the Wander Barn podcast network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at M.B.Om, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hey friends, I just wanted to pop in and talk a little bit about M.B.Om behind the scenes. When I entered the yoga world as a teacher, I was surprised by how many yoga teachers were struggling with the business side of yoga. And that's why I created M.B.Om. M.B.Om helps yoga teachers and studio owners become entrepreneurs. It helps you to go from surviving to thriving with your yoga business. I am on a mission to change the yoga industry, to teach yoga teachers and studio owners about the business of yoga, and to help you feel more confident, successful, and abundant. After releasing hundreds of podcast episodes, I want to create content that dives deeper into helping yoga entrepreneurs thrive and elevate their businesses. This is where M.B.Om Behind the Scenes comes in. Each week, you will get bonus content from the weekly guest or myself, diving deeper into how you can take the teachings and apply them to your business. This podcast is designed for yoga teachers and studio owners who are ready to take it to the next level. If you enjoy M.B.Om and have been looking for an affordable way to learn more, this is it. For the cost of 2 lattes per month, you will get never-before-heard content that you can't access anywhere else that will give you tangible ways to dive deeper into your yoga business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, let's dive in. Head on over to patreon.com/MBM yoga and sign up to get behind the scenes now. Once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM yoga to get all the exclusive behind the scenes content. I'll see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the M.B.Om podcast. This episode is brought to you by OfferingTree, an all-in-one, easy-to-use online business platform that I've been working with for years. If you're looking to save time, energy, and money, definitely check out OfferingTree. And don't forget to grab your special discount at offeringtree.com/MBOM. That's offeringtree.com/MBOM. And I'll make sure to tell you much more about OfferingTree as we get into this episode. But for now, let's dive into today's guest. Today, I'm really excited to be rejoined on the podcast by Mado Hesselink, who is the host of the Yoga Teacher Resource podcast. Mado and I have been connected for a number of years now, and she came on the podcast probably about 3 years ago to talk all about how we can change the yoga industry as yoga teachers. We had a super fabulous conversation about that. And I'm really excited for today's episode of the show because we're talking all about workshops. Mado has been a yoga teacher for many, many years now, and she's transitioned into coaching yoga teachers on both their teaching and their business. And so her expertise runs deep when it comes to all aspects of being a successful yoga teacher. And so today on the podcast, we're talking about how to actually create workshops that you can get people to attend, that you can sell out, and that people will actually be excited about attending. And Mado and I actually recorded this episode of the podcast a while ago. We recorded it kind of in the heat of the pandemic when she was getting ready to launch her course, Workshops That Wow, which you'll hear about a little bit later on in this episode. And then we held on to the episode. Her course never actually launched. And so this episode aired on M.B.Om Behind the Scenes, which if you're not familiar with M.B.Om Behind the Scenes, it is a bonus podcast feed where you get 10 to 15 minute episodes each week, diving deeper with guests. And this was a pretty cool episode because it was a full length episode talking about workshops. And so if you are curious to hear more or to learn more about M.B.Om Behind the Scenes, you can check that out at patreon.com/MBOM yoga. All right, that's all for now. Let's dive into the episode and hear all the goodness from Mado. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. And here she is. Mado, welcome back to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm really, really happy to be here too.
Yeah, I am so excited to get to have you back on the show. It's such a privilege to talk with you again. And I was looking at the date that we chatted last year, and it's actually kind of interesting because the dates are almost exactly a year apart between these two conversations, which is super fun. And so I'm curious if you can just tell myself and listeners what you've been up to in your business over the last year.
Wow, so much. I've been putting out a podcast episode a week. I have been working with yoga teachers one on one and using that laboratory to help me refine how I work with yoga teachers. One of the most exciting things for me is that I launched my very first online course for yoga teachers in January. It's called Workshops That Wow, and it walks yoga teachers step by step through creating, planning, promoting, and presenting their first filled up yoga workshop.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so cool to see how much you've been up to and just like how much you've been able to grow your business over the last year between, your podcast. Your podcast is such an amazing resource for yoga teachers. I know I love it, and I'll make sure, of course, there's a link for yoga teachers to check that out in the show notes. And then it's also been awesome to see you launch your course. And I'm curious to know, like, how did that launch go? Because doing a launch for a course is huge. It's a huge amount of work. And I don't know necessarily that anyone who hasn't done that really knows, what all that goes into that and how much effort you put into it.
It was a huge amount of work. I'm not going to lie. It was intense. And, the idea though is that you invest that time the first time around, creating your systems, doing the rough draft, so to speak. And then you refine that and you build on that work.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my many things that I love to debunk is this idea of, passive income. And certainly there's many ways that we can make passive income as entrepreneurs. But I think sometimes people get it in their head like, oh, I'm going to make a course and then it's just going to, you know, pay me going forward. And I think that one of the big things that I'm hearing you say is like a launch is a lot of work and you put a lot of effort into it. And especially when you're so passionate about the topic and the idea, it's like you don't just have your students sign up and then just leave them to go through it. It's like there's a lot of things that go along with that. Can you kind of touch on that, like what that experience has been like?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. So I think of it more like residual income over passive income. It's like you want to do the work once and then be able to have that like a butterfly effect happen where you continue to receive return for that work over a long period of time instead of this idea of passive income, which is maybe you do a little bit of work and then you passively receive the income there. You're going to have to continue supporting your students. So to your specific question about what kind of support, what that looks like. Well, number one, when you put something like this out there, you want people to get results. And they're only going to get results if they do the work. So you can buy a course, you can pay for a course, but if you don't actually go through the training and then take the action steps in the training, then you're not going to get the result that you were looking for. In this case, you're not going to be presenting to a room full of people who are really excited to hear what you are teaching them about. So for me, the support of the students through the course is just as important, if not more important, than creating the content in the first place. And one of the big things that I want to learn as a course creator is how to better support people to successfully complete the course and get the results that they're looking for. Because I don't have any interest in taking somebody's money and then not having them not receive the benefits that they were hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely. I love all of that. And I think that, just to me, everything you're saying comes from a place of really caring about your students, which is incredible. And that's one of the reasons, I loved having you on the podcast the first time. I've loved, getting to know you over the last year. And then I'm also really excited to dive deeper into a little bit more on workshops is because you do have this drive and passion. And so one of the things I am curious is about where your passion for workshops came from in your own career.
I am a passionate teacher. that's what really lights me up, is helping people see the world in a way that they didn't see it before, helping them have a more nuanced understanding, and specifically of yoga. So I'm a teacher of yoga, and I'm primarily a teacher of yoga teachers. And the reason that I love teaching yoga teachers is that they're as excited about the nerdy little details of yoga as I am. So workshops are this environment where, I mean, it's really special and sacred. We get together with a group of people with a similar passion or a similar interest or a similar problem. And we come together with the conscious intention to grow and learn together as a group. And for me, as a teacher, as an educator, that's just the most rewarding situation for me to practice my craft. I like teaching classes. It's rewarding also. And if any yoga teacher listening is like, yeah, I'm not into workshops, that's totally cool. I want every yoga teacher to find what they're passionate about, what they're good at. But many of us feel frustrated in regular classes that there's this need to keep the pace up. And there's this need maybe even to give people a workout, that's what they came for. And generally in a workshop, people are not there for a workout. They're there for a work in and a workout of their brain. And that's just more interesting to me. That's more engaging to me. So that's why I'm passionate about workshops.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with all of that anymore. I feel like, I can relate as a practitioner and as a teacher. And don't get me wrong, I love, a really great vinyasa flow class where I can really get out of my head and into my body and just be in the movements. But I also love those moments where the teacher sees something that's happening in the room and can break them down. I mean, those are some of the biggest growing moments I've had as a student. And I love being able to give those to my students as well. But there's always, if you do that in a class, there's often, you'll see people who get thrown out of that experience of just being in their bodies. And you can tell that they're a little bit like, hey, I didn't come here for you to break down this pose type thing. So it's totally where the experience of being able to offer that workshop where you really focus in on something can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so from the business side of things, how have workshops, impacted your career or been a part of your career as a yoga teacher? And I know that, right now you still offer workshops and trainings and all that good stuff, but I know a lot of your work right now is with yoga teachers. And I'm curious, if you can talk about workshops throughout your entire career, like as a teacher with students and then also teaching teachers.
As a full-time yoga teacher, in some ways, there's a bit of a limit to your monthly income when you're looking at your regular classes. So workshops are a great supplement to your income. When you look at the business model that you have and you're like, okay, I don't have the bandwidth to add more weekly classes, but I could teach a workshop every month or 2 months or even 3 months. And a lot of times the hourly return on teaching the workshop is higher than the classes. And there's a few reasons for this. One is that workshops tend to be longer, so you get more time that you're getting paid for. Two is workshops are more specialized. So often you can charge a little bit more for them because you're getting more targeted, specific information. And three is that you often actually get more students in workshops than you do in regular classes. It's not across the board, but it has been my experience that I would get more students in the workshops because of the need to sign up in advance and commit to it. And so because of those three things together, I would end up making more per hour teaching workshops for the actual teaching time than I would in my regular group classes.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all really great reasons to be teaching workshops. And, I'm definitely a big fan of, like you said, like teachers finding things that really excite them and make them passionate. And, if somebody's listening and they're like, I'm not too sure if this is for me, that's okay. That's totally fine for you not to necessarily love this. But for those teachers who are looking to kind of expand their businesses, I completely agree with you. I think that workshops can be a really excellent way for all of the reasons that you mentioned. And
One of the things that I feel like I hear a lot, and I'm sure you've heard this tons and tons of times, is teachers saying, well, I don't think that I'm ready to teach a workshop because I don't have a big following. And I'm curious if you can kind of talk about that a little bit. Is that something that they should be thinking of, or can we teach workshops even if we don't have, a massive Instagram following or a massive studio following?
Well, we can definitely teach a workshop if we don't have a massive following, but we will want to partner with a studio that has a list, that has its own following, its own population to draw people in. So it will be very difficult to self-produce a workshop if you don't have a following. But if you teach a workshop at a studio with a big list and or a big social media following, then if they help you promote, then it's that topic that's going to draw people in. So it can actually fill your classes out more as well, because people give you a shot during the workshop because they're really interested in the topic. And then they like you, and then they'll come seek you out for your classes.
Right. That totally makes sense. Like it can happen both ways in terms of, finding new students and then also having your current followers or your current students who really love you come to your workshop. So I think that that's a great point, and hopefully that encourages some people listening and reminds them that, you don't necessarily have to have that giant following. I guess one of the things, like if you're a newer teacher, when do you know if you're ready to host a workshop? Like if somebody's like, okay, so I don't have that big following, that's fine. But, I still don't know if I'm ready. Like, how do you know?
Well, if you can think of a topic that is going to appeal to a specific type of person, and you can kind of think off of your head, let's say of 5 people that you can immediately think of, these 5 people would be really into this workshop. They could really benefit from this workshop. I think that's the key to knowing if you're ready or not. Because if you just have a vague idea and you have no idea who you want to pull into the workshop, then I would question whether or not you're ready. But it's really about being able to picture who the workshop is going to help. Then you can pull those people in. But if it's really vague, it's going to be much harder to get people in. And the workshop's going to be less clear. It's going to be less powerful. It's going to be all over the place. So that's really what I look for in thinking about readiness, is clarity of message and clarity of the intended audience.
Awesome. So getting clear on your idea and then putting that together and finding somewhere to host it is kind of like the keys to, I guess, like getting started if you've never done this before.
Sort of, although I think that the order of operations that works the best is to think of the person first. And we might get into this again a little bit more detail later, but yoga teachers often think of what am I passionate about? What do I want to teach? And they start there, and then they think, okay, now who would benefit from this? And that's a backwards way of figuring out the workshop topic, or at least it's kind of the uphill way of doing it. If instead we think of, Mabel in my Tuesday morning class really is struggling with downward facing dog. And I know that she would be totally into a workshop that breaks down downward facing dog. And now that I think about it, there's like at least 5 other people in my classes that would sign up for that in a heartbeat and would really benefit from it. That's when you've got an idea. So to me, the most effective, the way of choosing a workshop topic that's going to have the most momentum behind it is starting with the person, and then from there finding the topic, and then from there finding more people who are interested in the topic.
Right. That totally makes sense. And I think that it is interesting how I think maybe for some people the brain works like the opposite way. And I mean, I totally get it as well, because it's like, as yoga teachers, we're so passionate about so many different things, all the different things that we offer, and we're excited to teach, which is one of the beautiful things about working with yoga teachers, like you said. I love when a yoga teacher is like, I'm excited by all these different topics. It's amazing to have so much curiosity and joy in this industry. But then it's also, you can have a bunch of different workshop ideas. Like, let's say, like, I don't know, a chakra flow or something. But if you don't have anyone who's interested in, then I think that that's where kind of this disappointment comes from. And I know a lot of the work that you do and also some of the work that I do is really about trying to help yoga teachers understand that we can have successful careers. And I think that part of it is knowing that it's not necessarily that your chakra workshop isn't great. It's just that maybe you're not in front of the people who want that workshop right now.
Right. And the other thing is, if you can figure out what it is that the people that you're in front of do want, sometimes you can relate it back to the chakra workshop, but you probably would not advertise it as a chakra workshop. You advertise it in the language that your people understand. And then they get there because they're like, what you are offering is what I want. And you say, great. And part of what I want to say about this topic is that here's how the chakras are relevant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that one of the things that you work with students on with workshops is doing market research. And I know that, this is a business word and it basically means, having conversations with the people in your target market. Can you talk about what that looks like? Because I think that for some people, maybe the downward facing dog is like very clear to them. They're like, yeah, I see this person struggling with this pose. I can think of other people. I'm excited to teach this. For other people, there's like, oh, I have all these ideas, but I don't know if these people are interested in it. And I think that those conversations, that market research piece is really key for that. So can you, talk a little bit about your method with that and kind of how you teach yoga teachers to do that?
Absolutely. I think we make a lot of assumptions about our students. And the moment that we learn things, the moment we go farther on the path, we have a harder time remembering what it was like further back. And market research conversations are a way of getting actual data from actual people to support or deny our assumptions, the assumptions that we're making about our students. Inside workshops that wow, I spend most of a module holding your hand through how to conduct market research conversations, specifically about workshops, including giving you a list of questions. So basically a script that you can follow to make this really, really easy on you. But the basic gist is that you identify first somebody who you want to help, somebody who you think that you are in a position you could help. And you are curious, you want to know, are the assumptions that you're making about that person correct? And how can you supplement what you already know about that person with a little bit more depth and clarity? And you basically just invite them to have a conversation. And I would be upfront that it's a market research conversation. I mean, you don't have to use that word. You can say, hey, I really enjoy having you in my class. Would you be open to having tea with me? Because I want to ask you some questions, get to know you better so I can find more people like you to serve. Most people feel indebted to their yoga teacher. Most people feel very, very warm and loving and open to their yoga teacher. And they feel that what they're getting is much more valuable than what they're paying, especially when you have that student who you've identified as being really rewarding to teach. So generally, that person is somebody who's giving you a lot of really great feedback. And so sometimes yoga teachers are a little nervous to do that, to have that conversation. But I say, weren't you nervous to get up on stage, or not stage, but get up in front of the class and teach your first yoga class? Of course you were. Anytime that you are going to be growing as a human being, there's going to be some discomfort there. So I want to encourage yoga teachers to push through that discomfort and get to the other side, which is having an intimate, real, interesting conversation with your students and hearing their own words about the impact that yoga has made in their life and what their hopes are, their dreams are, and their struggles and challenges.
Hey everyone, we're just taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about OfferingTree. I wanted to remind you about the special discount you can get with OfferingTree. I love telling yoga teachers about OfferingTree because not only is it your one-stop shop for all things that you need in your yoga business, but it is also easy to use, it's affordable, and it's truly an amazing company to work with. OfferingTree lets you sell courses, run classes, manage memberships, and so much more with just one account. That's right, just one login for all those parts of your business. One of the best parts about OfferingTree is their online store. You can sell digital content like yoga videos, challenges, and courses right from your website. If you're teaching yoga classes and looking to level up, selling digital content is the next step to growing your business. Over the last year, we've seen so much pivot and change happen in the yoga industry, and having your own unique yoga business where you offer your students different course material can be so beneficial in creating a sustainable business with diversified income. And while there's many different platforms that you can create courses on these days, OfferingTree's course tools are easy to use and they're really affordable. And if you have a website you already like, you can still use OfferingTree. But there's one other thing I want to tell you about OfferingTree that makes all the difference in the world to me and probably to you too. They're a company that truly cares about yoga teachers and the wellness industry overall. I chose to partner with OfferingTree because I love the product and I love the people. Whenever yoga teachers have a suggestion for something that they need out of the platform, they can reach out directly to the people at OfferingTree and they're actually heard. So much of the development that OfferingTree has gone through over the last year has been because of yoga teachers like yourself. So if you're looking to save time, energy, and money in your yoga business, OfferingTree is hands down the software for you. Go to offeringtree.com/M.B.Om to learn more and get your discount. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
And I think also something that I was thinking about while you were talking that is so important is putting yourself in the position of being that student. I mean, I have yoga teachers that I really love practicing with. And if any of them ask me like, hey, can we go for coffee and have a chat about this? I would be like, heck yes, I would love to, support your business and give you my insights. Like, I'm flattered that you'd think of me as somebody who you would trust to have that conversation with. So I think it is important if you're feeling uncomfortable to like remind yourself of how you would react in that situation too.
Yes, that's such a good point. I don't think we see ourselves clearly. And people do put their yoga teachers up on a pedestal a little bit for better or worse. And so, but as the yoga teacher, we don't realize it. We don't even realize we're up on the pedestal. So if you ask your students to have tea with you, yeah, they're going to be flattered.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And when you did your last workshops at WOW launch, it was really awesome. I got to attend one of the webinars you did on 3 keys to stellar workshops. And I was hoping that we could go through some of that stuff today. Would you be able to share some of the key things from the 3 keys to a stellar workshop so that people know how to create a stellar workshop?
Absolutely. So a lot of this we've already covered, but I'll break it down in these easy to digest bites. So the first is know your student. We already talked about choosing your workshop topic based on your student first, and then seeing how your passions can support that person. And we also already talked about when you name your workshop and when you talk about your workshop, use words that your students understand. The second key is have a flexible plan. So teachers tend to fall on one end of the spectrum or another. Some are over planners and others are under planners. And both is problematic. So what you want is a plan that's modular, that you have a system for editing it on the fly as you respond to the students that are actually in the room. Some of the things that happen if you have too much of a plan is that a lot of times you have too much content, and then you feel rushed and you are trying to jam too much in to one space of time. Our students can only absorb so much at once, and we need to watch them and see what's working. How much are they absorbing? How much can they apply what they're learning? And if they are needing more time with a certain concept, we want to give them more time. And yet we want to give them a sense of completion at the end of the workshop. So in workshops that WOW, I go very step by step into a framework for planning yoga workshops that is modular, so that you know exactly when and which pieces you're going to take out as needed. Another thing that happens if you don't plan, or even people who plan, they have a lack of clarity around the learning outcomes, meaning that they have kind of a general sense of what they want to teach, but they don't have a clear understanding of exactly what they want their students to take away from the workshop. And this isn't necessarily a problem. Like, you can still teach a really wonderful workshop that doesn't have clear learning outcomes. But if you want to take your workshops to the next level, know from the beginning of the workshop exactly what people are going to walk away being able to do, or able to repeat, or able to tell you about. And then finally, sometimes with over planning or under planning, we have poor time management. And what ends up happening is that the end of the workshop gets short shrift, and it feels rushed, and it doesn't feel like it's a full circle. It doesn't feel like a complete experience. So with the system that I teach in Workshops at Wow for planning workshops, we make sure that we have a certain amount of time at the end for the conclusion, because humans tend to remember whatever they experienced last. So even if most of your workshop is amazing and then the end kind of falls off and it's not as great, they're going to remember the end. So it's super, super important. And we don't want to let the time get away from us and not have that time for integration and reflection at the end. So that's the first two keys. Know your student, have a flexible plan. And the third is diversify your delivery methods. A lot of yoga teachers will lecture too much in a workshop, or they will teach abstract concepts while people are moving, and they won't give enough repetition for people to integrate the information. So I don't know about you, Amanda, but have you ever been to a workshop where you were just sitting there listening the whole time? Yeah. And like, there's only so much you can do that, so long you can do that for. Even if somebody's an incredible speech giver, I mean, there's a reason that TED Talks are only 20 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can get excited about our topic and then just go on and on and on talking, but we need to remember that our students have to experience it in order to really integrate the information. So that's one of the things I talk about as well in the third module of Workshops at Wow, which is about the teaching, the actual presentation, how to accommodate and not just accommodate, but how to serve people with different learning styles. And even if our learning style is primarily visual, we still benefit from the repetition of also having some kinesthetic experience of the concept. So those are the three keys to a stellar yoga workshop. And I have had people who took my webinar, my math online class about it, and they went from workshops that weren't filling up to fully packed yoga workshops. And I think that the big difference is just not just knowing how to talk about it, but having this sense of confidence. When you know that that your plan is solid, you're going to show up and talk about your workshop in a different way. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to talk about it like the way that I feel about Workshops that Wow. I'm like, every yoga teacher should take this. Not every yoga teacher should take this, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm excited for people to take it because I think there's so much value in it. And I want yoga teachers to feel that way about the workshops that they are offering.
Yeah, 100%. I think that that's amazing. And I love how it's all connected. Like, I think that when you feel confident that you have students that are excited about what you're doing, and then you feel really confident in the plan that you have. So you go in feeling like, okay, I've got this, regardless of what happens. Like, I've got a plan. I know, where I'm going to take things, and then feeling really good about the execution. I mean, that's going to come through in the way that you talk, your body language, all of it's going to kind of have this confidence, kind of the way that you said, like, I know that Workshops that Wow has value. That's the way that we want to talk about the offerings that we have and the workshops that we have, because that's what's going to get somebody excited about signing up and paying money for it. And, you have this really reciprocal excitement and confidence going on, which is going to make it really successful.
Right. And it makes people relax. When you feel confident, then they're going to be more receptive and they will actually learn better. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there's a graph that shows the relationship between stress and relaxation and learning. And there's an optimal place. So when we think about our nervous system, we don't want to be super sleepy. Like we don't want to be too relaxed during a learning experience. We need to have some activation of our sympathetic nervous system. However, if it gets to the point of being stressed, then our ability to learn crashes. So we really need this balanced nervous system in order to learn. And again, like so perfect for yoga, right? Because that's a lot of what we will be thinking about and talking about in yoga anyway. But it holds true for our students as well within the container of the workshop, that our methods for teaching, we need to watch them. Are they getting sleepy? Are they feeling like, are they nervous, right? Did you just introduce something they weren't ready for? Are they starting to look nervous? So what we want to do is we want to hold the seat of the teacher. We want to hold that confidence so we can hold the space for our students to feel relaxed and excited at the same time. And that's where they will be most primed to learn.
Yeah, I love that. I love the bringing in of the nervous system, because I feel like we get that as yoga teachers. That's something we learn in trainings. It's something that we talk about, and it's just a reminder that applies to a learning environment as well. And I also really love what you're talking about with the different learning styles, because I think that that's something that sometimes when we're preparing for things, we think a lot about how we love to learn, which is super normal. We draw on like what excites me about something, and we maybe teach it that way. And I think it's remembering that all of us have different learning styles, and having a blend of, mediums or ways to take in information is definitely, it's good for everyone, really. Like for me, I'm a very visual learner and I'm a very kinesthetic learner, but it's very, very beneficial for me to listen to something as well, because it makes my brain work in a different way. It's not necessarily the way that I choose to learn something or that I study something best, but it's hugely beneficial for me to take in information that way, for sure.
Oh, that's such a good point, that it's not always best to stick just to the learning styles that we prefer, but to push ourselves a little bit and to get out of our comfort zones and open ourselves up to multiple ways of learning, even when we know where we learn best. That we don't want, we would never want to say, oh, I learned best visually, so I'm not going to read this. We'd say, yeah, I learned best visually, so I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to listen. I'm going to see if I can get another layer of insight or another angle by listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And my 300-hour training that I did last year, did stuff like that. And I felt like it was so effective for all of us in the group. And also for me, like to be able to have all these different ways of consuming the content. It helped me like digest it a little bit better, which was really great. And something else that I was curious about as you were talking about the 3 keys for a stellar workshop is the preparation piece. And when somebody is preparing, if they haven't run a workshop before, do you suggest doing like a trial run with friends and family or anything like that? Or is the preparation like part of it, doing a really great job with it and trusting that you're going to be able to deliver it well? Like, what do you kind of suggest there?
Wow, that's a great question. I have never heard of anyone doing a trial run of a workshop with friends and family, because generally your friends and family are probably not going to be the ideal intended audience for your workshop. Now, anybody listening, if you want to do that, I would totally support you in doing that. I think that's a fantastic idea. I've just never heard of anyone doing it. It's kind of a lot. What I do recommend is practicing your intro, getting the very beginning of your workshop and the very end of your workshop very, very, being very confident and practiced in those pieces. So for myself, I will practice like the very first line or two that I'm going to say. I don't usually practice the end because by then I'm just so tuned in, I'm so dialed in that it just happens, it comes, and it never feels like awkward or like I'm not sure what to say at that point. But if you have a fear of that happening, then put something in your back pocket. Write it out, practice it, memorize it. And so if you have those bookends of I know exactly what I'm going to say in the beginning. I know exactly what I'm going to say in the end. And then in the middle, I have all these modules that I can pull out or leave in. Then you'll
Yeah.
feel really confident, I think. I think that's enough for most people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I actually haven't heard of anyone doing trial runs with family or friends either, which is why I wanted to ask you if that's something that you had ever encountered before. And I was just thinking about it because it's one of the things I remember when I graduated teacher training, like people were like, teach as much as you can, teach to whoever you can, which is obviously like really great when you're first starting out. But I love that you brought up like, even if you were to do that, your family and friends is not necessarily going to be your target market. And if they are your target market, you probably want them to just come to the workshop anyway. So I love the tip around doing the intro or like the beginning of it and the ending of it and getting really solid with that so that you can just let yourself flow kind of after that and get over that hump where you feel nervous.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, workshops at WOW is very comprehensive. I definitely have people who get in there and they're like, wow, this is a lot of work. And I'm like, you know what? You don't have to do it all. Like, watch it all, think about it, and do what you want to do. So I love that you added like that whole rehearse the entire workshop. Wow, that would be very, very dedicated. But to that, I think that the best thing is to run the same workshop multiple times. So you could even consider the very first time you run the workshop as your trial run, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And yeah, I completely agree. Workshops are a lot of work. So it is like an extra added piece. So it's the keener in me being like, should I be more keen? Should we be more keen over here? Should we do more work? um, One of the things that I'm sure that people out there are wondering, and I think that as yoga teachers in general, we definitely struggle with a little bit is the pricing piece. Do you have any tips in terms of like pricing your workshops and how to go about setting a price? And obviously, I know that if you're running it at a studio, there's a lot of, that decision might be made with the studio, but your input is obviously important. So, what do you kind of advise yoga teachers on that side of things?
Yeah, pricing is something that people do worry about a lot. And I think people should just experiment and not worry too much about it. But because the right price is honestly the highest price that people will pay. Here's why. We get more value, we pay attention more when we spend more. And for better or worse, that's just how human nature is. When you have offerings that are free, some people get a lot of value out of them, but a lot of people just don't take them seriously when they're free. And so the more that people are willing to pay, the more that you know that you've really hit on a topic that is very compelling to them. And frankly, the more value, the more like they are going to just be more alert in a workshop they've paid more for. So charge as much as you can while still, being accessible to the population that you're trying to reach. And then as far as the exact numbers, it's going to vary based on your topic, your population, where you live, all of these things. So within the course, I do include a calculator. It's like a little quiz you can take. You can put your info in, and it will spit out a starting point for you.
I love that. I really love that you've included like everything in this course.
I
It's just
tried.
like literally like it's like you need a calculator. I built you one. I got you. It's
Totally.
amazing.
I tried.
Oh, it's really, really incredible. And I think that, yeah, it's interesting, like from the perspective of, I guess, like a teacher and then also a studio manager, because I work with a couple different studios, but one in particular, like we sometimes have guest teachers running workshops. And we had one guest teacher who pitched us on a workshop that sounded really cool. It was on, I think she was like an Ayurvedic specialist and a naturopath, as well as a yoga teacher. And she wanted to do a workshop on hormones. And it was, the same length as one of our other workshops would be 2 or 3 hours, but she wanted to price it, I think, over $100, which I have no issues with that, obviously, but a lot of our other workshops sell for like $45. So then we were kind of running into the situation where we're like, well, our members and our students are used to paying a different rate for workshops. And unfortunately, we weren't able to sell it out because we have lots of other stuff on the schedule. And so I think it is like your market is definitely going to be a factor in that. And I have lots of different sort of mixed thoughts on this, which I'm sure you do as well. But it is like something we have to take into consideration, like where the studios we're teaching at, what those rates are and what our communities are like and what the market in that community is like and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. And I think if you're just starting out, you want to start on the lower side because that will be fair. And then as you run it multiple times and you get testimonials and you get people talking about it, you can incrementally start to raise it until you find your sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And I have tons of questions about workshops, but obviously I want to be mindful of your time and all that good stuff. I'm curious, are there any other kind of major tips that you want to share with listeners, from your course or that you've learned throughout your career as a yoga teacher, teaching workshops?
I would just say, if you love teaching, give workshops a shot. If teaching is your passion, then teach workshops because there's just no better environment for learning.
I love that. That's a really, really great piece of information.
Absolutely. And if any yoga teachers listening are interested in finding out more about workshops that wow, you can go to teachingyoga.net/wow and you'll sign up and get on the wait list so that you're notified once the doors open again. And as a thank you for signing up for the wait list, I'm going to send you a PDF download of 100 yoga workshop ideas. So you'll get that as soon as you sign up.
I love it. That's amazing. And Mado, you also have an awesome podcast. Can you tell listeners a little bit about that and where they can go to find that?
Yeah, the Yoga Teacher Resource Podcast is knowledge, techniques, and inspiration for yoga teachers. So we cover teaching techniques, we cover business, we cover marketing, we cover inner work for yoga teachers, and quite a wide variety there. And it's just at teachingyoga.net/podcast.
Amazing. I'll make sure there's links to all of that in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time today. It's been so awesome getting to chat with you again and just hear more about workshops at WOW and just learning more about workshops in general. You have so much knowledge. It's just really amazing. So thank you for sharing a little bit of that with myself and listeners today.
Thank you, Amanda. It was such a pleasure.
All right, friends, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Mado Hesselink from the Yoga Teacher Resource Podcast. Now, Mado mentioned a link at the end of that episode. If you go to yogateacherresource.net/wow, you will actually find out that her course is open for enrollment. So you can just go and sign up for the course, which is really awesome. It's going to be open from today, August 2nd, until next Monday, August 9th. Now, I also have a special link for you. If you do decide to use it, it will give me a little bit of a kickback. So it is a little affiliate link. And that is bit.ly/workshops that wow. So bit.ly/workshops that wow. Now, of course, you can use either link to sign up. And if you do decide to use the affiliate link that I just shared and that will be in the show notes, I would be super grateful because, of course, it gives me a little bit back on your purchase. But either way, Mado's course is really fabulous. You've just heard from her all of her knowledge and expertise on workshops. And of course, the course dives even deeper and will really help you create an amazing workshop that will actually sell out. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. And I just want to give a quick little shout out to OfferingTree. Thanks again to OfferingTree for sponsoring this episode. To start spending more time with students and less time with software, head on over to offeringtree.com/M.B.Om to get an exclusive discount. All right. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.